Welcome to Conspiracy Files. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we peer into the shadows of power, where whispers of a hidden authority have persisted for generations. Beneath the surface of democratic institutions and sovereign nations, some believe a secret world government is already in control, operating silently, pulling the strings, and shaping global events. Is this the rise of a new world order, or just a story designed to distract us from the real truth? The notion of a secret world government didn't emerge in a vacuum. Its roots stretch deep into the 20th century, a period marked by global upheaval, technological leaps, and ideological clashes. Following the devastation of two world wars, the world found itself fractured yet interconnected like never before. In the ashes of war, global institutions began to take shape. The League of Nations first, and then the United Nations, along with powerful financial bodies like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. These institutions were formed to foster cooperation and prevent further global conflict. But for some, they also represented the early foundations of something far more ominous, a centralized authority designed to erode national sovereignty. The Cold War that followed introduced a new layer of suspicion. As governments poured vast resources into surveillance, intelligence, and propaganda, the line between national interest and global control began to blur. Secret meetings, such as those of the Bilderberg Group, where political leaders, royalty, financiers, and business moguls gathered behind closed doors, only intensified public curiosity. These gatherings fueled suspicions that global elites were orchestrating policies beyond the reach of democratic oversight. Adding to the mystique were major shifts in global economics. The rise of multinational corporations and centralized banking systems concentrated financial power into the hands of a few. As corporations grew larger than entire nations, questions arose. Who really held the power? Elected governments or unelected executives? Events such as the creation of the European Union and the signing of multinational trade agreements further contributed to the idea of a move toward global governance. By the late 20th century, popular culture began echoing these concerns. Books, films, and television shows portrayed secret cabals manipulating world events from the shadows. These weren't just fiction. They were reflections of a growing public anxiety about transparency, influence, and who truly runs the world. The phrase New World Order began to surface with greater frequency, particularly in political speeches and conspiracy literature, often framed with dark overtones and warnings of impending loss of freedom. Religion and ancient prophecy added their own interpretations. Some Christian groups referenced biblical texts, linking the concept of a one-world government to the rise of the Antichrist. Others cited the writings of early 20th century mystics or interpreted Masonic symbolism as coded messages about a hidden ruling class. The merging of geopolitical events with spiritual belief only strengthened the theory's emotional pull, embedding it not just in political commentary, but in the cultural psyche. Through this mix of global power structures, secretive meetings, corporate consolidation, and age-old fears of losing autonomy, the stage was set. The belief that a covert force might already be steering humanity's future wasn't just an outlier idea. It had become, for many, a compelling narrative. The groundwork was laid for deeper suspicions and more detailed theories to take root in the minds of millions. Among the names most frequently linked to the concept of a secret world government is the Rockefeller family. With immense wealth and influence over industries like oil, banking, and philanthropy, the Rockefellers have long been seen by conspiracy theorists as architects of a hidden agenda. Critics point to their role in funding international organizations, such as the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, as evidence of their desire to guide global policy from behind the scenes. David Rockefeller's own writings, where he praised global cooperation and criticized nationalism, have been selectively quoted to suggest a preference for centralized control. Another frequently cited figure is Henry Kissinger, the former U.S. Secretary of State. His involvement in complex international negotiations and realpolitik diplomacy placed him at the center of several pivotal global events. His belief in shaping world order through long-term planning and strategic alliances is viewed by some not as diplomacy, but as manipulation designed to advance a unified global governance structure. His statements about the necessity of a new international order have become core material in conspiracy literature. The Bilderberg Group, formed in 1954, is often positioned as one of the most visible manifestations of this alleged secret governance. Comprised of political leaders, financiers, media moguls, and royalty, its annual meetings are private and off-limits to the press. While its defenders argue that it simply fosters informal dialogue between Western elites, critics contend that it functions as an unaccountable body, where global policies are shaped without public input. The secrecy surrounding its discussions has only intensified suspicions. The Rothschild banking dynasty, though originating centuries ago, remains a cornerstone of many theories. Their historical role in financing governments, wars, and nation-building has evolved into modern accusations that they still manipulate currencies, central banks, and financial markets for their own ends. Though many claims about the Rothschilds are exaggerated or rooted in anti-Semitic tropes, they are still widely cited in discussions about a hidden global elite. In more recent years, the World Economic Forum and its founder Klaus Schwab have entered the spotlight. Schwab's concept of the Great Reset, aimed at rethinking global capitalism in the wake of crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, has been interpreted by some as a thinly veiled attempt to usher in a technocratic global regime. The WEF's close ties with multinational corporations, government leaders, and its promotion of digital IDs and green energy reforms have fueled claims that it is laying the groundwork for a controlled, centralized future. Adding another layer are elite gatherings like Davos, the Bohemian Grove Retreat, and various United Nations summits. Each event brings together influential figures under a veil of exclusivity and discretion. While these meetings may foster legitimate collaboration, they have become lightning rods for those who believe decisions made far from public scrutiny are reshaping the world in ways few understand. These individuals and organizations, whether truly conspiratorial or simply influential, occupy the core of the narrative that a secret world government may already exist. Their power, privacy, and public statements continue to feed the idea that a coordinated, unelected force is shaping the course of history behind closed doors. Central to the theory that a secret world government is already in control are several core pieces of alleged evidence, claims that have circulated for decades, each adding weight to the idea that global power is being consolidated in ways that defy democratic oversight. One of the most frequently cited pieces of evidence is the recurring use of the term New World Order by political leaders. George H.W. Bush's 1991 speech before Congress, where he referenced a new world order emerging after the Cold War, has been repeatedly analyzed and quoted as proof that world leaders are openly acknowledging a global restructuring of power. Documents like the UN's Agenda 21 and its updated counterpart, Agenda 2030, are also at the center of the theory. These are publicly available blueprints for sustainable development and global cooperation, but they have been interpreted by some as outlines for a creeping expansion of global authority. Critics argue that while the language appears innocuous, its implementation could shift power away from individual governments and toward unelected international bodies. The emphasis on controlling land use, energy consumption, and economic systems is seen as part of a broader plan to regulate every aspect of human life. Another commonly referenced claim involves the central banking system. Conspiracy theorists argue that entities like the Federal Reserve in the United States and the European Central Bank operate independently of their respective governments and are instead part of a global financial web. The notion that private interests dictate the issuance of money, interest rates, and economic policies feeds into the belief that a small group of financial elites holds the true reins of power. Surveillance is another pillar of the theory. The expansion of mass data collection programs like PRISM, exposed by Edward Snowden, revealed the extent to which governments and intelligence agencies monitor citizens. For some, this level of surveillance is not merely a national security measure, it's a tool of population control. The rise of smart devices, digital assistants, biometric tracking, and the growing reach of artificial intelligence are seen as steps toward a system that monitors and influences individual behavior on a global scale. The COVID-19 pandemic added new layers of perceived evidence. Global lockdowns, vaccine mandates, digital health passports, and the coordinated messaging from international organizations were interpreted by some as a dry run for a more permanent system of control. The speed and uniformity with which policies were adopted across different nations fueled suspicions that these decisions were not independently made, but directed by an overarching authority. Symbolism is also frequently cited. Proponents of the theory point to recurring imagery, pyramids, all-seeing eyes, and Masonic references appearing on currency, in corporate logos, and at government buildings. While skeptics dismiss this as coincidence or aesthetic design, theorists argue that it's part of a hidden language, signaling allegiance to a shared agenda. These pieces of evidence, whether taken as facts, misinterpretations, or patterns drawn from coincidence, form the foundation upon which the idea of a secret world government stands. They are used to construct a narrative where power is not just centralized, but hidden, coordinated, and protected by layers of public relations, legislation, and silence. Scrutinizing the claims behind the secret world government theory requires dissecting the evidence used to support it. The quote by George H.W. Bush about a new world order, for instance, can be understood in the context of post-Cold War diplomacy. His statement referred to a shift from a bipolar world dominated by U.S.-Soviet tensions toward a more cooperative global order under the influence of international institutions. It was not, in itself, a declaration of global authoritarianism, but rather a political aspiration for peace and economic stability following decades of rivalry. UN programs like Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, while dense and bureaucratic, have not established binding mandates on national governments. They are frameworks designed to address global challenges such as poverty, environmental degradation, and inequality. These agendas operate on the principle of voluntary cooperation, and implementation varies widely between countries. The language that conspiracy theorists point to as authoritarian, such as global governance or population management, can be found in the context of policy discussions, not hidden mandates for control. The structure of the Federal Reserve and other central banks does raise questions about transparency and independence, but these institutions were deliberately designed to be separate from political cycles to maintain economic stability. Their decisions are subject to oversight, with public reporting and congressional testimonies in the United States. While private banks do play influential roles in global finance, equating that influence with the existence of a shadow government stretches beyond available evidence. Mass surveillance, particularly the revelations from the Snowden leaks, does confirm a concerning level of state observation. However, these programs were largely domestic in origin, built out of counterterrorism policies after 9/11. While troubling in scope, they lack clear evidence of being directed by a global body. The expansion of surveillance capabilities is more accurately viewed as a byproduct of technological evolution combined with national security policies rather than evidence of coordinated global authoritarianism. Symbolic imagery like the all-seeing eye or pyramid is historically tied to the Enlightenment, Freemasonry, and classical iconography. The Great Seal of the United States, which includes such symbols, was created in the 18th century with references to divine guidance and the founding of a new nation. These images have since been co-opted in popular culture, leading to interpretations disconnected from their original context. As for the COVID-19 pandemic, many of the rapid responses were the result of shared data, international health guidelines, and pre-existing emergency frameworks. Organizations like the World Health Organization provide coordination, but cannot mandate national policies. Variations in pandemic responses across countries reflect this. Some followed WHO guidance closely, others diverged significantly, suggesting a lack of unified control. Taken together, much of the evidence can be traced to misinterpretations, coincidental language, or a conflation of institutional power with covert control. That doesn't eliminate concerns about government transparency, corporate influence, or privacy erosion. but it does challenge the assumption that these phenomena must stem from a single hidden authority. The complexity of global governance, in many cases, reflects the decentralized and often chaotic nature of international politics, not the precision of a secret cabal. Skepticism toward the theory of a secret world government is grounded in several key arguments. Critics point out that if such a centralized and coordinated power structure truly existed, maintaining secrecy across so many global institutions, governments, and actors would be nearly impossible. The sheer logistical challenge of ensuring silence and compliance among thousands of individuals in powerful positions across competing nations raises doubts about the plausibility of such a unified conspiracy. Experts in political science and international relations often argue that global governance is not synonymous with global government. While international bodies like the United Nations or the World Trade Organization exist, their authority is limited by the willingness of sovereign nations to participate. These organizations are often riddled with internal disagreement, conflicting interests, and bureaucratic gridlock, hardly the hallmarks of a cohesive, all-powerful regime. If a shadow government were truly calling the shots, skeptics ask, why does global policy remain so fragmented and inconsistent? Journalists and whistleblowers have played crucial roles in exposing genuine corruption and covert operations, from Watergate to the Snowden leaks. The absence of credible insider testimony confirming the existence of a singular, secret world government stands in stark contrast to the patterns seen in real political scandals. While many conspiracy theories rely on leaked documents or cryptic statements, there remains no verifiable, comprehensive proof that an organized global cabal holds authoritative control over world affairs. Psychologists studying belief systems suggest that conspiratorial thinking often emerges during periods of uncertainty and instability. When individuals are confronted with complex or frightening events, wars, pandemics, economic crashes, it becomes psychologically comforting to believe there is an orchestrating force behind the chaos. The idea that someone somewhere is in control, even maliciously, is often easier to accept than the possibility of randomness or institutional failure. In this sense, belief in a secret world government may be less about factual evidence and more about a need for narrative coherence. Additionally, the tendency to see patterns where none exist, known as apophenia, plays a role in how some individuals interpret global events. When unrelated symbols, speeches, and decisions are linked together in hindsight, it can create the illusion of coordination. But correlation does not imply causation, and what might appear as signs of a global plan may simply be the outcome of shared challenges faced by different governments reacting in similar ways. Critics also caution against the real-world consequences of uncritically embracing such theories. Belief in a hidden world government can erode trust in democratic institutions, fuel political extremism, and distract from legitimate policy issues that need public attention. It can also be weaponized by political actors to undermine opponents or deflect responsibility for domestic problems, framing them as symptoms of foreign or elite manipulation. The skepticism doesn't dismiss the importance of questioning power or demanding transparency, but it insists on applying rigorous standards of evidence and logic to claims that suggest the existence of a global shadow regime. Without such scrutiny, it becomes difficult to separate plausible concerns from narratives rooted in fear, ideology, or misinformation. The idea of a secret world government has profound implications that reach beyond politics or international relations. It taps into deeper fears about autonomy, identity, and the nature of control in modern life. At its core, the theory reflects a collective anxiety over the erosion of individual agency in a world increasingly shaped by forces that feel distant and unaccountable. Whether real or imagined, the belief in a hidden authority alters how people perceive their place in society, often fostering distrust and disillusionment with traditional systems of governance. One major implication is the polarization of public discourse. When a significant portion of the population believes that elected officials are mere puppets of a hidden elite, it undermines faith in democracy itself. Political debates become less about policy and more about rooting out perceived traitors or uncovering shadowy agendas. This shift from civic engagement to suspicion has contributed to the rise of populist movements, many of which frame themselves as oppositional to the so-called globalist class. Social cohesion also suffers. Conspiracy theories about global control can foster a sense of isolation, not only from institutions, but from fellow citizens who do not share the same beliefs. This division can fracture communities and turn public health efforts, climate policy, and international cooperation into battlegrounds of ideology rather than shared responsibility. The result is a fragmented society where consensus becomes nearly impossible, and even factual information is treated with skepticism. On a psychological level, the theory can lead to a sense of helplessness. If people believe that all major events are orchestrated by an unreachable force, they may feel powerless to affect change. This defeatist mindset can discourage political participation, activism, and community building, ironically strengthening the very systems of influence that conspiracy theorists claim to oppose. The belief in omnipresent control replaces the drive for civic improvement with resignation or paranoia. Cultural narratives have amplified these effects. Films, television series, and novels regularly explore themes of hidden control and dystopian governance. While these stories can be compelling, they also reinforce the idea that such scenarios are not only possible, but probable. Fiction blends with reality, and entertainment begins to shape belief systems. In some cases, this dynamic creates an environment where people seek validation for their suspicions rather than evidence to challenge them. The educational system is also impacted. The proliferation of misinformation online means that students often encounter these theories at a young age, sometimes without the tools to critically evaluate them. As a result, conspiracy thinking can become part of their worldview before they have the chance to develop a nuanced understanding of global affairs. Efforts to introduce media literacy and critical thinking into curricula face resistance from those who see such initiatives as indoctrination. Finally, the broader implication is that the world appears less like a complex system of competing interests and more like a closed loop, where outcomes are predetermined by unseen hands. This worldview diminishes the perceived value of progress, reform, or collaboration. It breeds cynicism and reinforces the narrative that nothing is as it seems, and no one can be trusted. Whether or not a secret world government exists, the belief in one has already begun to shape the modern world in subtle but significant ways. The narrative of a hidden global regime has significantly influenced how media stories are framed, consumed, and interpreted. In the digital era, where algorithms tailor content to individual preferences, conspiracy-related material often thrives. Sensational headlines, mysterious connections, and provocative claims generate high engagement, allowing such narratives to spread rapidly across platforms. This dynamic has created echo chambers where belief in a secret world government is continually reinforced, even in the absence of verified information. Social media plays a pivotal role. Platforms like YouTube, X, Facebook, and Telegram have become central hubs for those who promote, question, or explore these ideas. Algorithms favor content that provokes strong emotional reactions, and conspiracy-related posts often outperform conventional news in terms of shares and comments. The result is a feedback loop where dramatic claims about global control are rewarded with visibility, making them appear more mainstream than they truly are. This has given rise to a new kind of influencer, the independent researcher or truth seeker who presents themselves as an alternative to traditional journalism. With polished production, professional branding, and a direct tone, these figures attract large audiences by promising access to the real story behind world events. While some are well-intentioned, others exploit fear and uncertainty for profit, pushing monetized content that blends facts, speculation, and fiction. Mainstream media, in turn, has been forced to respond. Fact-checking initiatives and investigative reports attempt to counter misinformation, but these efforts often backfire among those already entrenched in conspiracy beliefs. When outlets debunk the idea of a secret world government, it is seen by believers not as clarification, but as confirmation that the media is part of the cover-up. This adversarial dynamic erodes the credibility of journalism and makes productive dialogue increasingly difficult. Cultural storytelling has mirrored these tensions. Films like The Matrix, V for Vendetta, and Eyes Wide Shut have become cult classics among conspiracy communities. Viewers interpret these works not just as fiction, but as coded warnings from insiders. Symbols, dialogue, and plot points are dissected and recontextualized to fit real-world narratives, creating a kind of parallel media reality where everything points back to a hidden authority. Even news events are reinterpreted through this lens. Economic crashes, military interventions, global summits, and even natural disasters are framed as deliberate actions by unseen rulers. For those immersed in this worldview, there are no accidents, only signals and steps toward greater control. This perspective, while compelling, can obscure legitimate analysis and hamper efforts to address real-world problems through collective action. The impact extends to politics as well. Candidates and parties have begun to harness this language, suggesting that they alone are fighting against elite conspiracies. This tactic galvanizes support among disillusioned voters, but often leads to deeper polarization and a departure from fact-based policy debate. Once political discourse becomes shaped by secrecy and suspicion, compromise and governance become harder to achieve. In this environment, the line between media narrative and belief system continues to blur. The secret world government theory is no longer confined to fringe websites or late-night talk radio. It has become part of the broader cultural conversation, influencing how people interpret the world around them, who they trust, and what they fear. Beyond mainstream interpretations of a secret world government lie even more speculative and fringe theories, ideas that extend into the realms of ancient bloodlines, extraterrestrial influence, and interdimensional control. These narratives often serve to expand the boundaries of the conspiracy, transforming it from a political concern into a cosmic drama. For some believers, the notion of an elite human cabal isn't sufficient to explain the depth and reach of global manipulation. They propose that the true puppet masters aren't human at all. One of the most prominent fringe theories involves the idea of reptilian overlords. Popularized by author and speaker David Icke, this theory claims that shape-shifting reptilian entities from another dimension have infiltrated human society. According to this belief, these beings occupy positions of power in government, finance, and entertainment, manipulating human affairs while disguised in human form. The theory blends ancient mythology, Sumerian texts, and modern UFO lore, presenting a narrative where humanity is being subtly enslaved by a parasitic race that feeds on fear and conflict. Others turn to the concept of bloodlines, specifically the idea that certain families maintain power through secret genealogical ties. Theorists claim that these bloodlines trace back to ancient Babylon, Egypt, or even Atlantis, and that they have carefully intermarried to preserve their control across generations. Names like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Windsors are often cited, along with claims that these families practice occult rituals or possess esoteric knowledge that grants them influence over the masses. Another variation includes the idea of predictive programming, where films, television shows, and advertisements are said to contain hidden messages or clues about future events orchestrated by the ruling elite. Events such as 9/11, pandemics, and political assassinations are believed to have been foreshadowed in pop culture, not as coincidence, but as a way for elites to announce their intentions in plain sight. The theory suggests this is a psychological tactic, subconsciously conditioning the public to accept planned outcomes. Artificial intelligence and advanced surveillance technology have also become central to speculative theories. Some believe that powerful AI systems developed in secret are already being used to monitor thoughts, influence behavior, or even predict civil unrest before it happens. According to this view, the world government may be less a human creation and more a digital entity that emerged from the fusion of global data systems, capable of managing and manipulating society with inhuman precision. A smaller yet growing fringe posits that the Earth itself is not what we think. From flat Earth theories to holographic reality models, these ideas challenge the very structure of existence. In these narratives, the secret world government is not merely hiding truths. It is actively concealing the nature of reality itself. Satellites, space agencies, and scientific institutions are cast as collaborators in an enormous deception meant to keep humanity ignorant of its true potential. These fringe perspectives are often dismissed by critics as fantastical or delusional, but their persistence underscores a deeper yearning. For some, these stories offer a sense of coherence in a chaotic world, a framework where every symbol, event, and figure has meaning. In that way, they mirror mythologies of old, offering both a villain and a path to awakening. Whether taken literally or symbolically, they reflect an enduring search for truth in an age of uncertainty. In tracing the tangled web of theories surrounding a secret world government, one finds a mix of genuine concern, imaginative speculation, and deep mistrust of traditional power structures. The narrative has evolved over time, shaped by historical events, technological advancement, and cultural shifts. For many, it's not just about believing in a conspiracy. It's about making sense of a world that often feels beyond their control. Whether focused on global institutions, elite families, ancient bloodlines, or even extraterrestrial forces, these theories offer explanations for suffering, inequality, and geopolitical complexity in ways that feel personal and urgent. At the heart of the belief is a single unifying theme: that humanity is being deceived. That behind democratic governments, international agreements, and economic systems lies an invisible architecture, a system designed not to serve people, but to control them. This perception doesn't necessarily rely on hard proof. It thrives on patterns, anomalies, and emotional resonance. And once a person begins to see the world through that lens, nearly every event can be interpreted as validation. Still, it's important to distinguish between valid questions about transparency and the tendency to leap to conclusions without solid evidence. Corruption, influence peddling, and unaccountable power are real concerns. There are moments in history when governments have conspired, misled, or failed their people. These truths fuel the fire, but they don't confirm the existence of a single, all-encompassing global regime operating in total secrecy. What's clear is that the belief in a secret world government has real-world consequences. It can drive political extremism, erode democratic institutions, and sow division. It can lead people to distrust science, reject journalism, and withdraw from civic life. But it can also inspire activism, self-education, and a relentless pursuit of answers. In some cases, it empowers individuals to question narratives, investigate deeply, and hold leaders accountable. The internet has made it easier than ever for these ideas to flourish. Forums, videos, documentaries, and social media posts form a sprawling ecosystem of alternative information. Within that space, the line between curiosity and conviction can blur. Facts compete with feelings, anecdotes rival research, and skepticism can evolve into absolute certainty without the burden of proof. Yet the enduring appeal of the secret world government theory is not simply in what it claims, it's in what it symbolizes. A fear of losing autonomy, a distrust of institutions, a belief that something critical is being hidden. These emotions are not unfounded, but they also demand caution, because once the narrative takes hold, it's difficult to untangle where truth ends and fiction begins. Perhaps the more important question isn't whether a secret world government exists. It's why so many people believe that it could. That belief in itself reveals a fracture between the public and the powerful, a signal that trust must be rebuilt, transparency must be prioritized, and that people must feel heard and represented in the systems that govern their lives. Whether or not the new world order is already in control, the fear that it could be is shaping the world we live in right now. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Conspiracy Files. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Conspiracy Files on Spotify. Subscribe now.